New Buddha Way Dharma Talks. Geoff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
Everyone, today's talk challenges in life and challenges of life. So first thing I want to talk about is what do we mean by challenge? Well, according to the dictionary, challenge is something new. A pretty heavy idea of challenge, something new, not necessarily, and difficult. Well, where is that difficulty coming from? Am I inventing a difficulty? Which requires great effort. Does it require action at all? Is sometimes a question we need to ask ourselves. Great effort, well, not. Also determination. But anyway, I think we get the general idea. But what I want to do is to make a distinction between the challenge of life and challenges in life, which is quite subtle at first. We could also put it as the challenge of life and challenges of life. But the basic idea is just simple. Life itself is a challenge. That's one idea. So, for example, we're all going to get older, and some challenges come along with that. So that's a challenge of life because it's inescapable. We just get older, and as we get older, we start to lose our energy. We're more susceptible to illness. Parts of the body break down. This is a sad story which we don't really want to hear. What makes it a challenge of life is that we don't really want to think about this or prepare for it or even expect it. So we just think that wherever we are now, that's how it'll always be. But actually things are not like that at all. Things are constantly changing. So that's a challenge of life. A challenge in life is assumption that life just goes on from day to day, more or less the same. And then things happen in it, things that we don't really want to happen. That's a challenge in life. So life is going along, we're all cheerful and everything is not too bad. And then something bad happens. I slip on the ice and break a leg, right? That was unexpected. Now that's a challenge in life, in that it's based on an assumption, and that is that life is meant to be and is fairly smooth, chugs along, right? And then something goes wrong. So normal is for life to be more or less even, unchanging. Now there's another view in that what we should be looking at is the challenge of life, that life itself is a continuing challenge. And this, of course, is connected in Buddha's teaching with the idea of impermanence. These things are constantly changing, and therefore challenge is built into life. So we shouldn't be all that surprised whatever's going to happen from one day to another. Life is actually, I think we can see for ourselves now with the pandemic, life is fragile. Life is changeable. And worst of all, it's unpredictable. So back a year ago, we didn't think we would be in a global disease situation, in a pandemic. We didn't think that at all. Nobody was thinking about that. We were thinking about all sorts of other things. And if we switch on the news, there was no mention of a pandemic coming up. Now, of course, you switch on the television and there's nothing on the television except the pandemic. Things have changed. But I think what if you study the Buddha, you see that he wants us to change of attitude. Really, it's a look holistically. That is, if only we could look at life as a whole, we would perhaps make different decisions, maybe be less changeable in our attitudes and our feelings. that we would be somehow not building our life on the expectation that things stay the same, but not in a bad way, not becoming more anxious. Because according to the Buddha, our source of anxiety is actually our craving for things to stay the same. So if we can accept that things are not going to stay the same, then we become a bit more stoical about whatever's happening to us or with us or around us or due to what, how I'm reacting to things. So it's the opposite of what one might expect is a challenge. But that need not make us unhappy. It's just reality and coming to terms with reality. So a good example of that is, well, again, old age, I suppose, because you can't escape from that. But we're not recommending that you think about that all the time. We're saying that we acknowledge it and we're wiser. Not because we're constantly worrying about old age, but because we know that it's natural and it's part of life's curve, as it were. And look at everything else. Look at the bushes outside you, look at the trees, look at the flowers, look at the insects. There's a rhythm there. You know, birth, life, death, birth, life, death, birth, life, death, everywhere, everywhere. Birth, life, death. Why can't we accept that? Because at heart we're still children, I think. We haven't learned the lesson of life. That life itself is a challenge. But of course, there are also challenges in life, but we put too much emphasis on that. We think that a challenge is somehow either something that we bravely decide to do, or it just hits us in the face. So a challenge in life, if you listen to that expression, challenge is whatever normality is, and then something that shouldn't be there pops up and hits you in the face. Oh my goodness, there's a pandemic. What the hell is that? If you look at history, there's a pandemic just about every 100 years. Since the Middle Ages, there have been 8 to 12 pandemics of various sorts. Some of them have wiped out half of the population. So you might say that, in a sense, I mean, I hate to say this, but in a sense, pandemics are not that abnormal. They just keep happening, and we don't actually know where it's going to come from. It's exciting, isn't it? Being alive. See, it is exciting. It's amazing, and we haven't got the control over it that we think we have. And when we try to take control, things that stay the same, then we are really getting into challenging, right? And it's probably could make us quite unhappy because we rise to a challenge and then maybe we succeed with that one. That encourages us, so we go on to another challenge, and then we think we are making something called progress, obliterating from our minds the fact that progress always inevitably results in old age and death. So there's no such thing as infinite progress for us. See, some lessons are hard to learn. They don't sound very good. You know, we don't really want to hear this. I mean, I'd rather think about going down to the beach in the summer. Well, it's okay, you can think about that, but you know, we're not children. We also know that, you know, things can go in quite a different direction. So it's about getting some sort of wisdom and balance here. So it's a bit strange, isn't it, that old age is regarded as a challenge, in the same way, but they're not quite the same at all, because you can't escape old age unless you die at an early age. Okay, so it really is a teaching about impermanence. You see, there's a contradiction between Noble Truth 1 and Noble Truth 2. Noble Truth 1 is that there is human anxiety and suffering. Number two is that craving, wanting more, clinging. So these two things are at loggerheads. We're trying to hold on and control things which are uncontrollable. The most control we can get over things is when we accept them and go with them and go with the flow and make little changes as we go along, hopefully. So I always remember that little children's song, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. So that's a very wise little song, actually, because it's saying that when you go down the river, don't expect to be able to go wherever you like, or be disappointed when the boat that you're sitting in hits a rock or a branch on an overhanging tree. You've got to see those things coming as far as you can. Don't be too surprised if you didn't see it coming and get whacked by an overhanging branch. But the wiser we are, the more we can not direct the boat wherever we want to go, but at least manage the boat to some extent. The big rock coming, at least I can just change things enough, perhaps to go around the rock. On the other hand, maybe I won't, but we'll try. That's a challenge. But what I can't do is become the river itself. I don't know where the river is going. I don't know why it's going. Where is it going? Why is it going? The famous painter Gauguin, he has a painting called Where Do We Come From? What Are We? Where Are We Going? Beautiful painting, one of his most famous paintings, an impressionist painting. Where do we? Why are we here at all? What are we at a deeper level? And where are we going? Well, we can make some changes as we paddle down our river, but the river is in charge. Right? This is, sometimes Buddhism and Stoicism are quite closely related. It's interesting to read the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, one or two people here. Marcus Aurelius was the last great Roman emperor, sorry, and he was quite wise, and he would have gone along with this kind of teaching. But he knew that the Roman Empire was crumbling. He knew that it couldn't last, and yet he went on in little ways that he could, without great expectations, but did his best. Quite a compassionate figure, even though he was often sending soldiers off to war. But he would always think it through as to whether, is this the best thing to do, the best that we can do under the circumstances. So have a look at Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. It's quite a handy little book which goes back centuries, and you will see how little human beings have changed. We have the same thoughts now that we did in the 4th or 5th or 3rd centuries in the case of Marcus Aurelius, hundreds of years ago. Okay, so a lot of our suffering and unhappiness comes from our expectations. It's good to stop and think about one's expectations without getting morbid about it. There are expectations which block our way. There are expectations which lead to disappointment, etc. But there are expectations which are fulfilled. There are expectations which give us good ideas. But there are so many expectations lying behind the way we think and the way we act. Now, what the Buddha is concerned about, I suppose, is that a challenge comes to be seen, especially in our society now, as something good, something that one should rise to, and that a challenge leads to another challenge, and that to another challenge, and somehow I'm making progress. I'm getting on top of things. Well, yes, you're still going to get old and die, right? So you can't get aggressive about that. See, what we have in our society is a kind of permanently aggressive state. Things should be good and normal. And if they're not, it's because somebody's to blame for it. It's not quite true, is it? So there's aggressive with life, because life will, being what it is, hit you with things that are unexpected. Or at least we can have some dim idea that this might or might not happen without getting morose about it, because it's also true that very good and beautiful things also happen without expectations. Suddenly you'll meet somebody that could change your life. Or you just bump into something that needs. So, the challenge is, what we should also talk about, the challenges of some opportunity arising, an opportunity to do something good, and so on, but without grasping, without clinging, without wanting more. What the Buddha is getting at is that we have an aggressive, that somehow we have to fight to get things for ourselves, but generally we are often making a complete mess of it. Just need to calm down a bit and row our little boats down the river. What creates a challenge? Other people or you? Is it you that's creating challenges for yourself? Is it a good thing to create challenges for yourself? These are questions that only you can answer. Oh, law of nature here, except that there will be unexpected things going on. So it's good to ask yourself, maybe you're offered a job at a higher level and you think, oh, I'll get paid more, I'll get a bigger car, maybe we could move house. Well, yes, be careful there, because in our society, when certain opportunities arise, they're usually opportunities getting more. Whereas with little thought, we might see that we're actually quite happy where we are. So where are these challenges coming from? Are they being imposed on us by others? Are we being imposed? I am imposing them on myself through my craving, what the Buddha calls craving or clinging. Well, let's look at our practices and our exercises. First of all, for oneself, isn't it? Is to be able to stand back and look at oneself. What am I doing with life? What do I expect from life? What is life really going? And where are the opportunities not for gain, but for a moment of peace and happiness and togetherness? It's good as a practice to contemplate the unity. And that is, it's not, believe it or not, it's not all about me. I'm fleeting. I'm born, I live, and I die. Like everything else. The trees I can see through the window. Same thing. But when I realize that I am part of that whole movement, that whole change, it somehow helps me. It thinks, yeah, that is normality. Normality is born, they spring up again, they live, and they die. Right? I don't know why this chokes us up so much. How could things be otherwise? Can you even imagine for one moment living forever? Gosh, what a nightmare that would be. I'd rather have my normal dose of life, thank you. Living forever be horrifying when you think about it, not being able to escape from life. But when we think, a lot of the Buddhist teachings actually, it's just trying to de-center us, that I am not the center. I may feel like the center of the universe, but actually There are millions of us, even other little creatures. They're all centers as well. So we got this paradox that everything thinks it's a self, it's a center, but it's not. Imperfection is okay. There is no, we're not going to a place which is perfect. That all this other stuff going on with my family, my neighbors, and with crazy dictators and all the rest of it. All of this is imperfections. We should just work to get rid of all of that. What if, instead, life is imperfections? That's what life is. And that is actually how life changes, through what we regard as imperfection. And imperfection is a judgment that we have, that something is wrong. It shouldn't be, it's not normal. The way we feel about pandemics. And yet, if we look at history, there has never been a period since the Ice Age when we weren't at pandemics. And some of them have been worse than this one in terms of deaths. I read somewhere that until the Ice Ages, the melting of the ice, something like I think 20, 30,000 years ago, human beings lived in nice, probably not more than about 16 people. You can't have a pandemic with 16 people. It is when the Ice Age melted and then we had no food that we started eating basically grass and anything else. And if you think about it, most of our staple is a relative of grass. Rice, for example, is grass. Wheat is grass. We're eating grass. We're eating grass because we were pushed out of our normal thousands of years ago. Now, of course, we live in big cities, and that is when the pandemics start. It's good to have a bit of a perspective on this. Kind of helps in a way to know that things that we take to be highly abnormal are actually quite normal. Being quite normal doesn't mean, okay, I won't do anything about it, then I'll just lie down and die. No, the struggle goes on. That's life itself. Okay, I just want to finish on another thought that often comes up here, is about how our practices and our exercises should relate to the reality of life. Now, I've been sick with this, I've been sick with that, so I'm sorry to say I haven't been able to meditate. Now, the same person, you see them a week later, and they say, oh, I haven't been sick for ages now, I've been really well, so I haven't felt like I wanted to meditate. Okay, so if you're sick, you can't meditate, and if you're not sick, you can't meditate. So what does that leave you with? Not doing any meditation. So what isn't going with the movement of life? You see? It's interesting, isn't it? Because if I'm feeling quite well and energetic, I don't want to waste it on meditation. And yet if I am sick, then I don't feel like meditating. So the result is I don't ever do any meditation. Something going wrong with our thinking here. Well, it's a very interesting wrongness. The way the mind keeps, you see what it's doing? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. No equanimity, no balance. Bouncing about like crazy creatures. Okay. Finally, the worst of this is the workaholic. The workaholic who is making themselves miserable, chasing rainbows. And maybe apparently succeeding for a while, getting richer, getting a bigger house. But then old age starts coming along, things slow down, or they hit by something they didn't expect, and then they're indignant. Who can I blame for this, etc.? Don't be a workaholic. Don't be a lazy person either. So you just have to row that boat merrily down the stream, doing what one can. One can't control the river, but one can control the little. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you for listening to me.
New Buddha way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.